Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanamo Kevalam, Bhavanamo Kevalam, Bhavanamo Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam.
Namaskar to everybody. I'm thrilled. I'm very happy. Not only that Kamalesh is here to give us an extremely good workshop, which I'm very sure is going to be great, but also because this is a very good opportunity for so many of our graduates and activists in our movement to come together and enjoy developing our knowledge, our understanding together, and getting a little bit more of a relationship between ourselves. But I've known Kamalesh for many years, and he was in the very first training that we gave. I think it was back in 2010 in Cebu. There was only six Margies in that training. He and his wife were there, and four others, and met him many times in between then and now. And he's a beautiful, wonderful man and a brother, and I'm thrilled that this is happening here. Thank you all for attending. I turn over the program to Keshava to give a little bit more introduction about Kamalesh. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Welcome, everyone. My name is Keshava. I'm from Hong Kong. And welcome to the event here, Facilitating and Navigating Mental Health Challenges for Therapists, presented by Kamalesh Lovegrove of New Zealand. And Kamalesh trained as an occupational therapist and spent many years working in the mental health sector, where he has held professional and clinical leadership roles. He currently works as a behavioral consultant in the disability field as well as in a primary health care setting. So ANANDA MARGA Yoga Naturopathy welcomes Kamalesh. Take it over. Thank you.
Namaskar. Thank you so much for that warm welcome and opening. As was nicely described at the start, my name is Kamalesh and I am in New Zealand. So I'm very happy to be here tonight with you all, and I hope that you'll get something valuable out of this presentation and the time we are spending together this evening. And as graduates, I assume most of you have done graduated from the ANANDA MARGA Yoga Naturopathy training, and so you are all working with people and trying to help people move towards health and well-being and all-round happiness. And so you will no doubt realize that every person that you come in contact with brings along with them their mind. And even if they're coming to you for some kind of physical illness, the mind plays a integral role in every aspect of our lives. We are really our minds. Our minds is more who we are than our bodies in some ways. And so sometimes people experience problems in this kind of sphere, this realm of human existence also. And so that's what we're going to be exploring tonight. We're going to do a bit of a two-part, a first part, second part thing, but perhaps what I'll do is share my screen and we can sort of get underway. I'll try my best to not speak too quickly. I hope Ganeshji will keep a little eye on the chat and let me know if there's any burning questions that come through. I'm not sure if I'll see those or not. Anyhow, we'll do our best to get somewhere helpful with after this. Okay, so if I push that button and that button and that button, can you see my screen? Not yet.
There, we do see it now.
Okay, great.
If
Now,
you want, you can click slideshow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing that. There we go. How's that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Perfect.
good. And I can still see some of your faces. All right. So coaches, this is the kind of the term that we're using for our workforce, health coaches. And so it's good to include some comprehensive and strong skills in working with mental health, because it comes along with everything else that you'll see when people come to you for assistance. And there are some good skills that you can learn to be helpful in this kind of a space. And you don't have to necessarily become a specialized therapist in order to help people make some good health gains in their mental life. And so I've done a little bit of work alongside some of our practitioners, one of the Dadas, Srila Bhadrananda, and working with a few different people in different parts of the world remotely. Of course, it's not as good as face-to-face, but I think it's important that we include this in our approach to people's health and well-being, not just focus on their physical health. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, we're going to have sort of two parts this evening. The first part, which we're going to do immediately, is a bit of an overview of mental health and looking at some of the foundational kind of ideas and understandings that constitute psychology, essentially. And we'll do a little bit of a compare and contrast between our ANANDA MARGA Tantra-based understanding of the mind, and also comparing that with sort of modern psychological frameworks, theories, and approaches that are used in the world today to help people who are having sort of mental health challenges. Yep. Can you see my little arrow as I go like that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I can point to things. Yep. We're going to talk about some common disorders that you may come across from time to time, some of their signs and symptoms, things to be aware of to keep yourself and other people safe, and a little bit of an idea about what health coaches should be doing, or could be doing, can be doing, to support people in their mental health. And where's the line where someone else should be involved, and what can I do? And then part two will be a bit more of a focused look at anxiety. And because anxiety is a very, very pervasive challenge that many people around the world face. And if it gets a bit out of control, it can become a very damaging condition, damaging to a person's quality of life. And luckily, helpfully, anxiety is very amenable to psychological support. If people get good quality psychological support, they can alleviate a great deal of the suffering or the impact of this kind of a condition, or disorder. Yep. So that's what we're gonna do tonight. All right. So, is mental health a thing? Is it something that we should be paying attention to? Is it an issue around the world? Do you have a sense, perhaps, whether this area of health is getting better? Do you feel like things are getting better around the world in terms of mental health, or perhaps are they getting a bit worse and worse? Let me show you this interesting website. This is the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. Okay, so it's basically a research organization that looks at global mental health issues. Mental disorders are among the top 10 leading causes of health loss worldwide, with anxiety and depression as...
Excuse me, Kamalesh, are you trying to show us a different screen now?
Oh.
Because we still see is mental health important.
Oh, so you haven't...
You need to stop sharing.
Yeah.
And then the best is that you share your screen. Otherwise, you just click, if you're going to change from screen to screen.
I see. Thank you. How about now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm used to working with people in real life. I'm not a super gun with my computer. Anyhow, this is a very helpful overview of mental health conditions across the world. Okay, Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. So they calculate this thing called the global burden of health, and they look at all kinds of disorders and diseases and illnesses, and one of them is mental health. Yeah. Anxiety and depression, mental disorders. Here's some big statistics there. This one here, 71% of global anxiety disorder burden could be avoided if all people with anxiety disorders had access to good treatment. That's basically what I just said. Anxiety can be helped. All right. Now I'll just show you this because we have a global group with us tonight. This is looking at the prevalence. So that means how often does it occur in a population. Prevalence of mental disorders worldwide. It's a few years old, but not very. And you can see a map of the world there, I hope. The darker the green, the higher the rate of mental disorders in that population. The lighter the green, the better. So up here you can see the range. The lowest is 9,700 per 100,000. So that's basically 10%, 1 in 10 people. Up to double that, which is basically nearly 2 in 10, 1 in 5 people in that population have mental health conditions. So who have we got here tonight? Anybody from America? 18,000 cases. So up the dark end.
Before the election?
Yeah, this is 2021. What have we got? Anyone in the UK? 15,000, a little bit better. Statistics only mean something. They don't mean everything. Russian Federation, 12,000. Quite a bit. 12,000, 18,000. That's quite a big difference. India. So the worst places, well, if you can say that, the highest prevalence of mental disorders is, I don't know why, Portugal. Very high, right at the top. So in Portugal, you walk down the street, 1 in 5 people you see potentially is struggling with their mental health. Yeah. Best best case. I heard that we have someone from there. Vietnam. Vietnam, you win. So much lower. 1 in 10. Not 1 in 5, 1 in 10. So it's double. Anyhow, and here's me, New Zealand. Not pretty high in New Zealand. Australia, pretty high. Brazil, as we can see, everywhere around the world, it's fairly prevalent, means common. Mental disorders are common and growing, basically growing. Iran, very, very high. Okay, so now I have to stop sharing and go back to my slide and reshare. That's right, I'm learning. Yeah? So yes, the answer to that question is yes. Funnily enough, I think the answer is yes. Now, how do I... There we go. All right. So, human existence is trifarious. So we have a physical body, we have a mental sphere, and we have a spiritual self. All three are integrated in one whole of a human. And so when there is a balance between these three spheres, well, that's a good thing. Yeah? And in any of these spheres, we can develop kind of imbalances, disorders, illnesses, diseases, or just distortions, essentially. And they interact and impact on each other. So they're not separate. The mind and the body are not separate. They're integrated. Yeah? And so we're examining this sphere tonight, the mental sphere. But we use the word psychic over here. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm using the word mental. Mental, as in to do with the mind. Okay, so actually within ANANDA MARGA itself, obviously we're a spiritual path, and so we are performing a lot of spiritual practices. We have a great deal of philosophy, and a lot of it has to do with the mind. And so I believe really, if you practice sadhana, if you practice meditation, then you will automatically develop insight into the mind, and it puts you in a better position to help others also. So in ANANDA MARGA, psychology has been included as a branch of philosophy, yeah, because it's fundamental to who we are. And so the exploration and the study, ology means the study of, the mind, is a daily practice for many of us. Humans, the mind is the most important aspect. We are mind dominant. Our minds are more important than our bodies. Our bodies are super important, but really our minds is who we are. We have this concept that the mind is layered, that from the body all the way up to pure consciousness is kind of a layered, graduated, condensing and expanding system. So the mind is a system. It's not just a singular kind of a, even though we have a sense of being a singular entity, which we are, but there are layers to our existence. So there's this idea of biopsychology, glands, subglands, vrittis, sanskara, so conditioning of the mind from the past. Some of these ideas here are kind of really psychological techniques, sublimation, which we'll talk about more later on, is an idea where you sort of transcend crude elements of your mind and sublimate them to a higher part of up the mental layers. Autosuggestion, that's what we undertake with our sadhana, etc. Ideation on the great, and this concept of pinnacled intellect, that the mind can become pinnacled, and that is essentially the quintessential achievement of the mental layer. That's kind of what we are as humans trying to move towards in so many ways. And so ultimately we have this branch of psychology or psychophilosophy, I think I invented that term, is about yoga, liberation, oneness, etc. Okay, so, but along the way, people have all kinds of problems. And so in the West, at least, or at least within health services, psychology has developed as a health science. And it's about helping people who have problems of various kinds in their behavior. So around the world, cognitive behavioral therapy, you most likely have heard of that. CBT is the most common, it's kind of what research circles would call the gold standard for psychotherapy, I suppose. It's got the most research behind it. There's different types. We look applied psychology is looking at cognition, mood and affect. We'll talk about that. And it has this emphasis on pathology and diagnosis. We're looking at change. People, our approaches are generally defined by the people that we work with, helping them to move towards a meaningful life. Not really a concept of overall human achievement, but rather sort of a relativistic position. Whatever you think a good life is, I help you move towards that. And then it's mainly about function, living your life, and really, mental distress, psychological distress becomes a kind of a pathological or disorder when it really impacts on your ability to live your life. So it's not really about the presence or absence of certain signs and symptoms. It's really about, is it to such a degree that it is impacting on my ability to live my life? Yeah. That's what defines, in my mind, what a disorder is or isn't. Okay, so we're sort of doing a bit of a rapid, going through some ideas pretty rapidly, but I'm assuming that many of you have a good base of understanding of some of this stuff. And if not, well, these are little pointers to explore further. You can review the slideshow later. So human beings are trifarious, physical, mental, and spiritual. Okay, well, the mind is also trifarious. So we have these nested layers which are kind of reflecting each other. And we have kind of three, this is ANANDA MARGA psychology, obviously. Three core or sort of essential elements of the human mind, which we, in these Sanskrit terms, chitta, aham, and mahat. Yeah. So this is the subtlest layer of mind, mahat, which is your just pure feeling of existence, my I feeling. Aham is an activating part of the mind that allows us to do stuff. I can act. And this is the portion of the mind that new actions emanate from. And chitta is the objectivated part of the mind. And there's a lot to this. We're only just really touching on it, but this is the reactive part of the mind. This is where our sanskaras are embedded, and this is where we're going to talk a lot tonight about habituation, so developing patterns and habits, and action and reaction, and how a lot of mental distress is related to sort of accumulated momentum from the past that's in this cheetah layer. Yeah, and so we're just exploring the psycho-philosophy a little bit. And then we'll get more to the applied aspect. So overall, just to recap, mind is layered, it's dynamic, so it's not just fixed, it's changing. And so these different layers move dynamically and expand and contract and exert more or less impact overall. The key aspects of certain, cognition is about memory and the ability to think. We also have feelings. So we're not just computer robot AIs, we have feelings. Yeah. And this is, we'll explore that more when we talk about anxiety. But lots of people feel like they have a lot of problems here. And so the mind does stuff, it acts, and so it actually has behavior. And so when we talk about habits, they're not just habits of me doing things like getting up, brushing my teeth, etc., but they're habits of thinking. And these sometimes become problematic. Of course, there's the physical element behind the mind. Well, underneath it, supporting it, neurochemical hormones, etc., neurology. You can get imbalances in this layer, which manifests as kind of looks like mental disorders, but it's coming from the body up into the mind. That is a thing, and that is a thing that psychiatry has spent decades focusing on and creating medications, essentially. It's a very materialistic way, but we still account for that in our sort of yoga approach also, with vrittis and glands and subglands. And so it is an important aspect, but we're not going to explore that too much tonight. We're going to focus mainly on the mental layer, because mental disorders at the end of the day exist in the mental layer. And my approach, my understanding is that wherever the problem is, the solution comes from a higher layer within the human system, not from a lower layer. If you have a mental problem, providing physical solutions will not be comprehensively effective. And I think that applies to herbs, etc. as well. Of course, there are certain herbs that are soothing to the mind, right? And so the temptation is someone comes with depression, you say, oh, you should try St. John's wort or something. Yeah, it might help, it might be supportive, but it's not going to solve the issue. It's got wherever the problem exists, the solution exists in the higher layer, not the lower layer. But of course we are holistic, so we are supporting people on all layers, physical, mental and spiritual. Actions and reactions. Now this is massive. We'll talk about it more as we go along. And ultimately, we have this concept of moving towards or away from this, our kind of supreme destiny as a human being. It can be your supreme destiny, or it can just, for people who don't think like that, you can just bring it down to, what are my life goals? Who do I want to be? What kind of person do I want to be? Or what kind of life do I want to have? And then this is a very simple way to understand, am I moving towards that or am I moving away from that? And really that is vidya and avidya. Am I moving towards or away who I really am? And this is a good way of talking with our students, clients. Then they can very easily understand sometimes that the things they are doing are really pulling them away further and further because they feel bad. All right. Any questions so far? I know we're zipping through this stuff pretty quick. Whoopsie. But this is a whole massive branch of philosophy and psychology, and really it's worth studying. That's a bit of an overview. Okay, so this is another concept from Baba's literature of systosis, that everything in the world, everything in the universe moves, everything moves. So mind also moves, and nothing moves in a straight line, everything moves in a systolic wave. So we can, a wave has an upward part and a cresting part and then a fall and then a dip, and then that's what a wave does. And thoughts are essentially waves, mental waves. Now, some waves are lovely and smooth and nice, and some waves are choppy and crashy. And so some of these thought waves that we have are existing in our minds from the past, and they are reactive momenta. And some of those things serve us and some of them don't. And that's an important part, is to realize and be able to tell what's happening in my mental behavior, my mental field, and is it helping me move towards the great? Am I following my dharma or not? So waves, and this is a nice quote from Baba in Yoga Psychology, that in the psychic sphere, unnecessary waves are to be removed. This will remove many burdens of the mind. I must not think about petty things because that will waste my time. People should remember this. This removal, or rather withdrawal, of unnecessary and undesirable thoughts emanated from the mind will help you. Yeah? This is part of this cult of a pinnacled order, so moving towards a pinnacled mind. It's not just that we only ideate on the Supreme. Just spiritual practice is really not enough. Baba's saying here you have to also deal with these unnecessary or unhelpful thought waves, because some of them pull me away from my goal. And so we have to kind of edit our thinking a bit. And I like this word Baba's using, withdrawal. Withdrawal. Because we can't crush these thoughts. You can't crush them out of existence because that creates more waves. But withdrawal is a very interesting concept to explore further. All right. Are we okay to keep moving?
Yes.
Feel free to throw a few questions out here and there, and I'll try my best to deal with them. Otherwise, I'll just carry on. Okay, so that's a bit of an idea of the mind itself. Okay, we've explored that mental sphere a little bit. What is it? What does it do? Thinking, remembering, action, reaction, waves, some moving towards or away. These are some core concepts. Because
Bhavanii has written, I'd like to understand what is the higher level solution, but later she's expecting that you're going to talk about that later, correctly? Is that correct?
Correct. Yep, I will. Just know that we have all the resources within us. We have all the resources. We have all the layers, but we're not always competent at moving up and down. Anyway, I'll definitely make some practical solutions about how you can apply some of this stuff. All right, so now we're just going to look at what happens when it all goes wrong. We've got this amazing mind machine. Really, in my opinion, the mind is the most miraculous thing that has ever existed on the planet. It is the most miraculous thing. And everything, if you just, this computer that I'm communicating around the world with right now was produced by someone's mind, not mine, but somebody, all of these amazing things come out of our minds. Most of our problems also come out of our minds. And so now we're going to explore psychological distress and also mental disorders. Okay, so this is up the scale. We're going up the scale. It's not just struggling a bit, but what is it like when it starts to become an actual disorder? And essentially, it's all about the mind's behavior. So traditionally, psychologists only consider objective, observable things as behavior. So what I do, the fact that I'm rubbing my neck, that is behavior. So they'll subtly analyze your behavior as cues to what's going on within. But I think a more helpful way is to think that thinking is also a kind of behavior. It's just private behavior. Nobody can see it. Nobody can hear it. But it is also a kind of behavior. And it's about how we operate our minds. It's what we do, and that makes all the difference. Moving towards or away, essentially, actions and reactions. All right. These are a few quotes from Baba in his discourses with regards to Brahmatrikona. Brahmatrikona is, I think, one of Baba's most amazing contributions, and we should study it more and more. And I'm using some of the Baba's ideas in this presentation. You'll see lots of groups of 3. Yeah, because there's triangles that we can construct helpful things. Anyway, so the human mind has 2 functions, thinking and remembering. And the human being is predominantly a mental being. And the greatness and excellence of human beings lies in their thinking capacity, their intellectual subtlety, brilliance and wisdom. Mind is everything, essentially. And it's our duty of every sane human being to see that there remains movement in his or her mind. So the mind must move. Not only that must it move, but that mental movement should be charged with proper acceleration. Where there is no acceleration, retardation is sure to take place. So you either move towards or you move away. If you don't move towards, you end up moving away by default, because you can't stay still. The mind doesn't stay still. And so you're either growing and expanding and becoming more subtle and more kind of embodying your deepest values, or the opposite is happening, mostly. And we need to basically develop a certain kind of balance within the psychic stratum, the mental sphere. And the peak of progress for the mind, when you're in that peak progress, you maintain adjustment with the material and spiritual progress of individuals and society. The mind gets powdered down and it grows not only in mass and volume, so it's not only expanding, but moving forwards towards that pinnacled point. Yeah? This is what we can achieve. And when I say towards or away, this is what I mean. But obviously, this is a high philosophical perspective, but everybody is doing this. Awesome. Everybody is fulfilling this in their own life. They are moving towards higher versions of themselves or lower versions of themselves. And our role, if you want to be a health and wellness coach, is to help people move towards as every step of the way. All right. So here we have three spheres nicely balanced with good overlap and interaction in all directions. So this sphere interacts in both directions, and so does this one. And there's balance. Equipoise and equilibrium is what Baba talks about. So balance so everything is a system, including the mind, and we're trying to balance the weight of the different aspects, and that they are all functioning in a way that also leads to balance. And when everything gets out of balance, we kind of become distorted. And this is part of what we're talking about, how mental disorders develop. That if we keep taking these, we're not moving towards, we're moving away, and our minds are heading in a downward trajectory. It's a loss of balance. It's a loss of dynamic equipoise and equilibrium within the mind. And Baba describes these three phases of loss of balance. And the first phase is what he calls derangement. And that just means that the parts of the system they're out of arrangement. They're not arranged properly. Like I'm sure you all have your own room, and you have your room in a certain way. Things are in a certain place so that you can use that room the way you like to use it. You feel comfortable there. And if someone came and moved everything around, turned things upside down, opened your drawers and moved your bed, right? That's a kind of a derangement, and you wouldn't be able to function in that room like you normally do. This happens in the mind, right? Things get deranged. Another word for derangement is disorder, right? It's pretty similar. Derangement, disorder. And if that continues, you can turn the corner back up into a positive direction at any point, but if you don't, then it gets worse. And the second phase is called disruption, where you actually start losing your ability to function. Your innate capacities and characteristics start getting disrupted. And finally, if you keep moving in that direction, there's this kind of degeneration phase, which is kind of actively moving away at greater speed. So instead of this idea of acceleration in a positive direction, we're actually accelerating away. And that's where things get really bad, can get really bad, massive impacts on yourself, on others, on your life, on your ability to maintain everything that you might have developed. Yeah.
So, Kamalesh,
Yes.
if I can mention, of course, the first like 15 minutes or something, it was used up unnecessarily. So we might go a little bit over time. The original idea was an hour and a half.
Okay.
Technically, we've gone 55 minutes or then we
Okay.
subtract 15 minutes, it'd be 40 minutes. So we should be nearing to the middle point.
Okay, I'll speed up. Sorry. Thank you for telling me. I get a bit carried away, and I should speak less. I'll move more swiftly and say less. All right. I'll try my best anyway. So essentially, mental behavior, we develop behavioral momentum, essentially, and it's either in this way or it's this way. It's a bit more complex than that, but this is how we can boil things down for people that makes sense. It's not too you're moving forward or we're moving back. And we just develop habits through exposure to life. And these two terms, volition and habituation, you could also call them action and reaction. So we can take action, create new actions based on what's important to us, but we also develop habits, patterns of behavior and thinking. And momentum is a movement, and it has a force behind it. And so just like this big ship here, if it's, chugging through the ocean, if the captain turns the engines off, that ship will keep moving in the same direction for a while. And the mind is like that. We rely on these habits and patterns because it's very stressful to have to make things up every day. If you've ever started a new job or moved to a new country or moved into a new house, for the first week or so, everything's a bit more stressful because you have to work out how to do, where to go, all those things that after a while, when you're in a rhythm, you just do them without thinking. So some of this momentum helps us, i.e. if you've got a habit of getting up and doing your sadhana every day and you don't really have to think about it much, it's just a habit, that's helpful. But if you have a habit of getting very angry every time somebody mentions something, that's not a helpful habit. And so the mind is conditioned from the moment we exist, even before we are born. Yeah. And so we're conditioned by stuff that we're born with. And so just also with mental disorders, etc., there are certain inborn things that make you more likely to develop a mental disorder, such as genetic predisposition. Some conditions like neurodiversity are just inborn. They don't develop. You're born with it. The mind is also conditioned by the context that we live our lives in. And we do stuff. We also do stuff, and we develop our own conditioning because we're active agents in our own lives. And when it comes to mental disorders, trauma is so pervasive that it should be considered in every case. We call this trauma-informed care. And not everybody, but a very high proportion of people with mental disorders have an experience of trauma in their life. And trauma is not all about the thing that happened, but it's about how you responded to that thing. It could be one big incident, or it could be many smaller incidents. But trauma has very massive, lifelong impacts. And depending on the degree of it, depending on the degree of the impact, but it affects us physically, mentally, socially, emotionally, even spiritually. Trauma is a big deal. And you better consider it when you're working with people who are expressing distress. And you might as well consider that if almost everybody has had some sort of traumas, if they're presenting to you in that way, and it won't harm you if they haven't had a trauma, because the extra compassion that you'll add will still benefit them. And so, but mostly it's about how we respond to stuff in life. And I'm not going to explain these terms now because we're running out of time. But basically, we can respond to life in such a way that we keep moving in the direction we want to move in, or sometimes we respond to what happens in life in such a way that it makes it worse. We're trying to help, we're trying to sort of work things out, but in the course of that, I'm making everything worse. I feel very stressed at work, so now I'm drinking extra, and then I'm drinking too much, and that makes work worse, and then I feel bad, and then I drink more. All right, so we go round and round with these maladaptive or unhelpful coping patterns. And all of that stuff, genetic predispositions, early childhood trauma, cognitive reactions and experiential avoidance, etc., distorts the mind. And that is what a mental disorder is a distortion of the mind. Yeah. So the Bible of mental health psychiatry is called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This is the reference book that all that everyone refers to essentially, and that defines all the mental disorders that are recognized in the world. And it's in its fifth iteration, DSM-5. You could just call it the DSM-5. And so it describes and provides the diagnostic criteria for every mental disorder. And diagnosis is something that's very important to doctors and healthcare systems, because it allows you to access certain kinds of health services sometimes, or insurance purposes maybe. And it also opens the door to certain kinds of treatment options. But this is the metaphor that I like for diagnosis. It's really quite a bit like astronomy. You look in the sky, you look up in the sky, and there's just a lot of stars up there. And then we decide those stars go together, and that forms a constellation. When really the relationship between those stars, we have distinguished that pattern. And so a person is not their diagnosis. A person is always much more than that. So many more factors than just what is written in that diagnosis book. And the person is exactly the same the day before they were diagnosed to the day after they were diagnosed. They are exactly the same. They haven't changed one bit. We've just added a label. Now that label does help some people, and for some people it's very undermining and disempowering. So, just so you know, basically. Alright, so these are some of the very common mental disorders that you will definitely come across at some point, at least some of them. And like we saw at the beginning, right, on that map, it's everywhere. There's nowhere in the world where there is no mental disorders. There are cultural interpretations that are different, and that's important, but disorder still happens. And so there are, in my opinion, there are other ways of breaking it up, but I'm trying to keep things sort of simple. Essentially, you kind of have disorders of mood, so that's feelings. You have disorders of thought, you have disorders of behavior, and then you've kind of got inborn stuff. That's how you were born, and it's a developmental issue. So in mood, BPAD stands for bipolar affective disorder. So mood and affect. Mood is how you feel. It's invisible. Nobody can tell. Affect is how you express your mood. That's what we can see. So if I'm smiling, you could assume I might be happy, but you don't know. All you know is that I'm smiling. So affect means expression of emotions. And so that is characterized by extreme fluctuations of mood, from very manic to very depressed. Manic, depressed. It's quite a serious illness. It can create a lot of problems in people's lives, as can these all. But they can also not cause massive problems in people's lives if they're well managed. All right, so depression. Everybody knows what depression is. It's pervasive low mood and hopelessness. And when it gets really bad, you start losing your ability to do everything in your life, even getting out of bed. I've seen people who can't get out of bed because they're just so depressed. What's the point? Disorders of thought. So psychosis and schizophrenia is basically long-term psychosis. Psychosis can be an episode and then you become right again. Schizophrenia means you've had it long enough that it's probably going to stick around. So that is basically disorder of perception. You see and the world looks different to you. You hear things that nobody else hears. You see things that nobody else sees. And your thinking is disordered. You can't maintain a logical frame of thinking, and you lose your ability to do stuff in your life. And losing the ability to do stuff in life, that's the main point. If you hear voices, but you're fine, you're doing your job, you're looking after your family, and you're doing the stuff you love, and you hear voices, probably doesn't matter too much. We wouldn't worry. I wouldn't bother about it. But when your life goes downhill, well, that is the problem. There's behavioral issues. People have heard of narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, sociopaths, psychopaths. These are personality structures that cause people trouble. And substance abuse is kind of a behavioral condition as well. Everything branches out from there, right? So you could... oopsie. Oh my gosh. Here we are. You can have psychosis and be depressed, right? You can have substance abuse and bipolar. So it's not, nobody ever turns up with just one condition. And then there's developmental things like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism. These are inborn. They have a lot of difficulty with the world, and they can have a lot of psychological distress alongside it, but you can't cure people from being who they are. This is like neurodiversity. This is where that comes in. All right, moving along, trying to keep up. All right, so what can health coaches do in this space? If you don't have any training as a counselor or a therapist, can I do anything? Well, yes, you can.
Yeah, Kamalesh,
Yeah.
is this meant to be in the second half?
No.
Okay.
But nearly. I'm nearly done. I'm nearly done, Dada.
Go ahead.
This is in general. This is what health coaches, I think, should focus on. Keep doing what you do. Keep doing what you know about. Help people with detox and their health changes to support their health and well-being in all ways. And when it comes to mental health, really, we need to recognize what we're seeing. So what are the general signs and symptoms of mental disorders? And we can develop some skills that are supportive. The way we interact with people, we help them make plans around their well-being, and you can learn some basic psychological skills that you can teach people, like relaxation, stress management, mindfulness, etc. But don't try to be a counselor or a therapist if you're not one. Just stick to where your skill base lies and add on from there. You can train up. And the other part is we need to develop connections in your local area with people who do have those specialist skills. And all you need to be able to do is recognize when you need to send people over here. And then you can keep supporting them safely. So recognize, support, and connect. That's my little trachona there for health coaches. Maybe I'll leave this, but you can look at it. This is an acronym for recognizing what you're looking at. It's a little framework you can hold in your mind. BATOMI, behavior, affect, thoughts, orientation, memory, insight. I can't explain it because Dada's wanting me to move on. But this is a helpful little framework to hold in your mind. What are they doing? What's their emotional expression like? Does it match what's going on? Are they looking all happy and they've just lost their job? That doesn't match. What's their thoughts looking like? You can only tell what their people are thinking by the way they talk. Are they orientated to time, place, and person? Do they know where they are? Do they know what's going on? What's going on in their memory? Are they forgetting stuff, or are they getting flooded with intrusive memories? And insight. Does the person have insight into the nature of their own difficulties? Do they know that they're facing a problem, or do they blame everyone else? Know your limits, stay in your lane.
I ask a very quick question here.
Yes?
So can you put the previous slide?
Sure.
So if we see that an individual has that one, yeah. If we see that a person is affected by any one or two of these,
yeah,
what are we to do with that?
Well, they're just indicators of, we're kind of trying to make a decision about the severity of the mental condition that the person has.
Okay.
And so this can either help, like someone might be crying and very distressed in front of you, and you might start to feel nervous. And then you need to be a bit calm and think about actually this and this. Now they're going to work, they're still, family's intact. They're not doing anything really to harm their situation. It's not really a big problem. They're just very upset about it. Or actually, their behavior is very erratic. They're laughing when they should be crying. They're talking about all sorts of crazy stuff they never used to talk about. And you start adding up a picture where it's like, actually, this is a bit more serious, and I really need to be connecting in with someone who's got good skills. So it's just about recognizing degrees of mental disorder or mental distress.
Clear.
Yeah? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So because with mental illness or mental disorder or psychological distress, there are some risks. People can hurt themselves or others. And so the best thing you can do is if you start accumulating red flags and you're a bit worried, or this person starts talking in such a way that it sounds like they're hopeless, their life is not living, we just need to develop some confidence to ask them. Don't be so afraid you don't want to mention it. I hope it'll just go away. We need to ask some questions. And essentially what we want to ask about is, because somebody can say, oh, what's the point? Oh, I wish I was dead. I wish I was never born. People can say things like that. It's worrying if you're working with someone. That's not good. And so then we say, I've noticed you've mentioned about life is not worth living a few times. Have you really thought of at any point maybe hurting yourself in any way? Okay, this is how I ask people. Have you thought of hurting yourself in any way? Because that's about intention. Oh no, I'd never do anything like that. God, I wouldn't do that to my family. Okay, sweet. That's okay. He's just expressing hopelessness, but doesn't have an intention to hurt himself. Yeah, or they say, yes, I have thought about it. I think about it all the time. Okay, that's worrying. So then if they have intention, then you ask them, do you have any plans? Have you thought about how you would do it? Have you thought about how you would do it? Okay, this is a question you can ask. And if they say no, that is good. That's a green tick. If they say yes, I think I'll hang myself in the closet, well, that is much more dangerous, because now he's got intention and a plan, and their plan is kind of realistic. They could do it. Those are all super red flags. Immediately try to contact someone if they answer yes to all of those. If their plan is super unrealistic, I'm gonna tie myself to a train track and wait for a train to come in, but there's no train tracks nearby. It's not realistic. It's not as dangerous. Okay? So ask and tell. That's all you need to do in that area. It's scary, but it is what it is. All right. That's the end of part 1.
I'm just going to very briefly, I'll share my screen, give you a little bit of news and updates and announcements. Share. Okay, are you seeing my slideshow?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, so can I move this? There we go. Okay, let's move on. And you saw that, wow, there's a whole bunch of my screen that gets cut off, so I can't see it properly. Just give me a moment.
We see it fully.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm starting with a report which I presented to all the Dadas and Didis and the essential workers in the Jamalpur review meeting. Okay. And this was the report that was given. We have 7 centers, plus we have 15 other countries running regular programs without centers. During 3 months, this is what this report is about. We've treated more than 1,000 patients. We now have over 200 graduates. We have 12 trained, experienced coaches, plus many more in training and not yet qualified. Hopefully that includes some of you. We have a global core team, which meets weekly online. I'll show you that later. And our ANANDA Center has been treating a good number of outpatients. Some of them are repeats, and we've had 11 detox camps during this period, attended by a total of 160 people. We've developed a website during this time. This is a quick view of it if you haven't seen it. Overview, our 6 steps, our coaches. We have these 12 coaches which are available for individual consultation. They may do it for free, for cheap, or charge nicely, depending on their own perspective and who they're dealing with. So Keshava is the coordinator of these coaches, and people contact him, and then he refers them according to their time zone and their interest. In the website, we have testimonial videos, we have a lot of text messages, we have articles in the website. These are primarily to attract people to this website, provide information, and maybe make people interested in seeking the help of a coach. So then we have our events page, which is showing the future events that are coming up. These are all future events coming up. A pretty good number of them are there. And we just started an Instagram page. Dada DharmaVedananda has now made 2 reels for that, and it's in the process. Even when I get time, I'll also do that, and others are there. We have a newsletter that I hope that all of you have been receiving. It comes out quarterly. This is about our program in Italy, about in Malaysia with Jayalalita, about the program that was held in Asheville, North Carolina, an article about green juicing. This is also in the United States with other and the first one was especially led by Ramesh. This is led by Didi Nanda Chira and Dada Manananda with some help from me. Then this is our program in Orissa, where we have a center, and our outpatient program in Anandanagar. This event that's tonight, that's the newsletter. And then a very quick look at the training that we just had. Tantra Pitas, therapies of different types, medical education camp that was held in the village with more than 100 villagers present, including a lot of children, different therapies done for them, a visit that we made to ANANDA MARGA Children's Home, and the great rapport that we had there, different types of meals in different situations, detoxing, and the planning when the presentation of individuals and groups for the near future, as you all did in your training. That's the end of the slides that I showed them. Here are our global core group, Dada Bhadananda. I put exclamation point because we have a meeting every single week among the 7 of us, and it's usually 5:30 in the morning for him. So he really goes to a lot of trouble for these meetings. We consider them important, and participation is active. And we have a lot of agenda each time. We are really trying to do as much as we can. And one person who's not in the core group, but very active in this sense, is Sister Tarika in Abu Dhabi. She's in charge of the newsletter. So these are the new programs and projects that we are expecting, hoping will develop during 2025, during this coming year in Russia, in Vietnam, and in South Africa. Real concrete programs or projects, long-term ones, which hopefully will be coming up. Plus an increase in already existing activities in Brazil, in Australia, in Italy, in England, and in the United States, and maybe also in Denmark, maybe in Egypt. This is really important. This is a new thing that we've developed. We have 9 sectorial coordinators who are to work with all of you in your sector. There are 9 sectors of the world. So for South America, we have Vivek and Indira. In India, Ashwini, who's in this meeting I saw. Southeast Asia, Sister Jaya Lalita. Africa is Sister Jaya in South Africa. In Europe, Brother Mohan in England, he's in this meeting. I think I didn't really see who's in this meeting and not. In the South Pacific, Mudita in Australia. In the Middle East, Ananda Tapamai. We don't yet know. We haven't yet assigned for Northeast Asia and North America. I am planning to go January in South Africa. In May, I'll hold a 3-week training. I never make 2 trainings in a year, but the Chinese cannot get visa to India. So it'll be a special program for them. And because it's in Korea, Koreans will also attend. In June, England and Italy, maybe Spain. It's unclear, and I'm waiting for feedback whether this year I'll go to Vietnam or Australia or Brazil or Malaysia or the Middle East or Anandanagar. Now, in Anandanagar, what do you think if we hold a course for 10 to 14 days for graduates about iridology, which means the capacity to diagnose physical symptoms? I don't know if it diagnoses psychic symptoms by seeing the iris. It's not something you can learn in a day or 2 or 3. It really takes time. Even 10 to 14 days is short. But we're looking for somebody who can teach that very nicely. Let's see. I will mention it in the chat group, grads chat group, and see what reaction you all have when we are able to find such a teacher. So we will help you. Any kind of programs that you want to make, if you contact Keshava, you can get a revised copy of the 1-month training manual. And if you have any other need, the WhatsApp group is there. We promise to help you. And if you want to help, and this is super important, we need anybody who knows a bit about or wants to learn about software like Canva, iMovies for newsletters, event promotion, video editing, Instagram reel editing, language translation, or minor website maintenance. Please contact us either directly or through the chat group if you are open to trying to help with any of these. It will help the work tremendously. And finally, well, let's get back to, maybe we should have, Kamalesh, you want a very short routine and then we'll start?
What was that? Sorry, Dada?
Would you like to play a 30-second kirtan and then we'll start?
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. All of you are sticking through. It's a time taking, but I feel that this is gradually getting more valuable. Over to you, Kamalesh. Thank you. Namaskar.
Salam Kevalam. I don't know what time it is where you are, but for me it's 1:30 a.m. So I appreciate you all sticking with me. However, it's worth just considering in your own mind what types of mental health issues have you come across with the people you work with, or what have you noticed in your local area. Okay, so that's about recognition. What have I noticed, and what kinds of mental health services are available in my area? Obviously that will differ widely depending on where you are in the world. But what resources do I have that could support me in my role when I rub up against sort of mental health conditions that are a bit outside my skill base? So I think it's important to develop some relationships locally with people at least who you can get a bit of support from. Hey, I'm doing this. Does that sound about right? Could be medical people, social services, counselling type people, or people in the mental health system of your local area. All right. So we're going to do a little bit of a talk about anxiety specifically, and I hope that this will be helpful to you, because anxiety is probably one of the most common things you'll come across, and it's associated with all kinds of other health conditions, and it is very amenable to support. If you give good quality support, people can overcome the problems associated with anxiety. Yep. It's a feelings-based. Anxiety is a feeling, so this is broadly within that mood disorder realm that we mentioned before. Is it a problem? Well, it can be, but in and of itself, it's just a feeling, and feelings are not problems. I'm going to just chuck ideas at you, and these are the kind of things that I talk about with my patients and my clients, and because it's about undoing some of those unhelpful mental waves. And so unhelpful mental waves are actually ideas or beliefs that have hung around long enough that they've kind of got embedded in the mind. Yeah? And these ideas that people hold cause problems. And so one of the things we can help is undo some of those ideas and replace them with ideas that are a bit more helpful. So people with an anxiety disorder may experience excessive fear or worry about a specific situation, or it can be generalized. They don't know what they're feeling nervous about, they just feel nervous. It can be generalized or specific. And for it to be considered a disorder, it really has to last for some time. Everybody feels nervous. As with every aspect of what we've been talking about tonight, it's on a spectrum from just normal up to serious illness. And it's not like people with a mental disorder have something different from us. It's just a question of severity or scale. Yeah, so everybody feels nervous from time to time. I felt a little bit nervous tonight, but I'm still doing this presentation regardless, you see? That's the difference. I could be hiding in my bed. Oh, I'm so nervous. That's a problem. Yeah. Anxiety disorders are the most common mental disorders around. 300 million people. Affects women more than men, but it affects men plenty. Often we see anxiety in our young people. There are highly effective treatments for anxiety. If you're going to learn something about anything within the mental health sphere, learn about anxiety. What can I do to help anxiety? People will thank you for it if you're good at it. All right, it spills out. It affects how you think. It can lead to other kind of uncomfortable feelings. You have physical symptoms. In fact, in some people, some cultural groups, they will talk much more about the physical signs and symptoms, even though it's a mental disorder, really. It's anxiety, but they talk about their stomach. They're worried about their stomach, or they're worried about their heart. I think I've got a heart condition because my heart's always thumping. I said, oh, of course, because you're very, very anxious. Heart palpitations, sweating, trouble sleeping. When you don't sleep well, everything goes downhill in terms of health, right? And lots of people who have anxiety struggle with sleep, because as soon as they try to relax, the mind becomes super active. And the highest expression of anxiety is basically a panic attack, which is super scary. And people think they're going to die. They literally think they're going to die when they're having a panic attack. Yeah. All right, so anxiety is on its own, it isn't actually a problem. It is a very helpful survival emotion. And, a bit of anxiety has kept us alive for 1,000,000 years. If you're lying out in the forest and you hear a little noise, it's quite good to get a little bit nervous, and it drives you to get up and walk around and check. And then you can relax again. Yeah? All right, so anxiety is future focused, mostly. They are anticipating something and feeling bad about it now. They feel bad now, but they're thinking about the future. Anticipation. And anxiety is designed, if it's designed, is designed to be uncomfortable. It doesn't feel nice, but it's not supposed to, because it's designed to get you up. Right? It's designed to get you up and do something about your situation. So of course it's uncomfortable, but because it doesn't feel nice, people think it's bad. They think it's a problem. It's kind of stressful. Being anxious is stressful. And when you get stressed, you can get more anxious. And when you're more anxious, you feel more stressed. But really, it's just an innocent feeling. I like this term. It's an innocent feeling, and it's trying to help us. Every aspect of our being is kind of there to help us in certain situations. And in those situations, they are very helpful. Like when there is a disaster or something seriously wrong is happening, it's good to be energized with anxiety. It's not good when you're trying to go to sleep at night. So it's context specific of whether it's a problem or not. And action is the antidote to anxiety. I learned that myself when we had a massive flood here at my house, and the cliff started washing away, and I thought my buildings were going to fall into the river. I had a panic attack. And you know what I did? I jumped up, ran around, I got on the phone, I got a truck there within an hour, and they got a crane and they moved my building, and then I could relax. Right? It wasn't a mental disorder. It was very appropriate to be panicking at that point. All right. So this is a way of explaining things to people that helps. And it's not going to be as effective on the computer, but oh no, this is a different thing. Sorry. Yeah. So this is something that how I try to explain to people, and this is a very helpful way of framing all kinds of mental health challenges. So we've come from that sort of philosophy psychology, and now we're getting into practical. And this is something that people can relate to. People have thoughts, people have feelings, and people do stuff. Okay? And that is us. And so the way we think affects how we feel. This is obvious, but this is what people find very reassuring, to have an understanding of what's happening for them. So the way we think affects how we feel, and the way we feel affects how we think. It goes in both directions. So if you're feeling very anxious, you tend to think, you start worrying. That's a kind of a thought process attached to the feelings of anxiety. And if you start imagining all kinds of problems, you're going to start feeling anxious. And how we feel affects what we do, and what we do affects how we feel. Again, it's in both directions. People who are super anxious tend to avoid. That's what they do. They avoid stuff. Unfortunately, that avoiding makes feelings worse. This is when we start getting into a spiral of and ultimately some kind of disorder. And of course, how we think affects what we do, and vice versa. This model on its own is very helpful for people to understand because it is sort of empowering. There's something I can do in one of these spheres. And I ask people, which one of these spheres, which one of these realms, which one of these areas can you control? Which area can you control? It's an interesting question to get people to contemplate on, because many of the people that you'll see who are struggling with their emotions and their thoughts, they haven't had a chance to think about it deeply. They're just experiencing it. So we help them to understand what's happening. Well, the answer is we can control our behavior, ultimately. We can learn to have some control in our thoughts. Yeah, we can develop some control in our thoughts, but there is reactive thoughts from the past that will pop up in your mind, out of your own control. And you can't control your feelings. People find that a very challenging idea to consider sometimes. You can't control your feelings. Well, if you can, you probably shouldn't. Because when people feel bad, they think that is the problem, and they ignore what they're doing and what they're thinking in the situation, and they focus on the fact that they feel bad, this very intense anxiety. And the anxiety becomes the problem. I've got to get rid of this feeling and then I'll be fine. And the feeling is the problem. And they invest all of their thoughts and all of their behavior is invested in trying to crush that feeling out of existence. And you know what that tends to do? It makes everything worse and worse because it doesn't work. You can't destroy your feeling, you can only suppress it. But it's still there. It's still got that reactive momenta waiting to be expressed. And so people spend a lot of time who are suffering from anxiety or other emotional challenges trying to get rid of those feelings because they're not nice. And so using this model, you can discuss all of this kind of stuff with people. But it's important that people should get the idea when they are struggling with their emotions to try less to really tightly control that feeling and focus more on what they're doing in their thinking and behaving. That's much more productive. And then their feelings will follow. All right, so earlier when Bhavs was talking about we have to withdraw from some of these unhelpful mental waves. Well, these are a few examples of unhelpful mental waves. They're ideas, they're beliefs that get stuck in people's heads that are super unhelpful. And this is just a random list that I've written from the kinds of people, hundreds of people that I've worked with, hundreds and hundreds. These are the kind of things that cause people trouble. That their feelings aren't actually real. Some people don't think that their feelings are real or valid. Because feelings change and move, some people think that that makes them not really valid. Because it's so changing, it's not really a real thing. Or when people feel really anxious and they're like, I have no reason to feel anxious, so it's stupid. I'm stupid. The feeling is stupid. These are ideas. All right, that make everything worse by affecting what we do and feel. We all seem to have an idea that certain feelings are good and certain feelings are bad. And if you have a bad feeling, like anxiety, then you're bad. I'm bad. If I feel bad, I must be bad, or broken, or weak. These are the kind of ideas that we're looking for when we're talking to people, and because these are the actual problems, not the anxiety. These are some of the problems, because these are some of the thought waves that are pumping that anxiety. Hating the feeling, we want to reject it. It's kind of like a negative attachment. It's a repulsion. I hate this feeling. I must get rid of it. But it's part of myself. And so you set up this internal struggle. I'm trying to get rid of part of myself. It never works. It can only work temporarily if you are successful at suppressing it. All right. Feelings from outside. You made me feel like this. Not taking ownership for how you're feeling. That feelings must be controlled. Feelings mustn't be controlled. We can control our thoughts, we can control our behaviour, we can control our senses. But if we try to control your feelings, it's a recipe for trouble. Got to get this feeling to go away. I should only feel happy. I should only feel calm. I see lots of people in my practice who are kind of like spiritualists, actually, practice different forms of meditation or mindfulness, alternative practices of many kinds. And they come in with these kinds of ideas. Oh, I'm a spiritual person. I shouldn't feel angry. I shouldn't be anxious. What's wrong with me? My practices, when I'm doing my meditation, I feel fine. But when I go outside, I feel super nervous again. All right, they're creating a problem around their feelings by the way they're thinking about it. And this one at the bottom here is very, very dangerous idea. People have this idea that they'll do stuff when they feel good. And if they feel bad, I won't do stuff. Stuff that's important to me. People that are important to me. I will withdraw from those things. I'll avoid those things because I'm afraid of feeling anxious. And then, this is what I call shrinking life syndrome. It goes smaller and smaller and smaller because the nature of anxiety is if you retreat from it, it grows. So everyone tries avoidance, and in every case, it makes it worse. You avoid this person, I still feel anxious. Now I have to avoid that person. And now I have to avoid going to that place because I felt nervous there last time. And pretty soon, I can't go out the front door because everything makes me anxious because I'm withdrawing and avoiding. So read this list later and look out for these kinds of ideas in people and help them notice that they're thinking like that. And this is how we help them. We ask them the workability question. Is that helping? I understand that you've tried this and that and you're doing less and less and you're going out less and less and you're not going to see those people, you're not going to that place anymore. Has that helped? No, it hasn't. My anxiety is worse than ever. It helps in the moment. It only gives short-term relief, these kind of unhelpful strategies. Short-term relief, long-term problem. We want people to focus on long-term improvements, even if they feel bad in the moment. All right, so this is the three kind of glitches, three unhelpful responses to feelings. So if you feel anxiety, no, I'm not feeling anxious. I'm just going to ignore it. Okay? It's kind of denial. It's not happening. For as long as possible, I'll pretend it's not happening. They're not stupid. People aren't stupid. They're trying to cope. So you've got to help people realize you're not an idiot. You're not crazy. You're trying your best, but it's just not helping. These are the kind of things we say to people. So ignoring my feelings want our attention. And if you ignore them, well, they tend to grow a bit. Plus, you lose every opportunity to do helpful things along the way until it's really strong and then you can't ignore it anymore. the other approach that people take. So there's ignoring, which is sort of passive, and then there's suppression, which is more active. Actually, I'm trying to squash that feeling down with all of my power, and to get it out of me, to squash it down, to shut it up, to make it go away. It's just like, metaphors are very helpful for this thing, and I talk about, for people, we live near the ocean, so it's like you push a surfboard down under the water. Okay, you can push it down for a little while. You have to put a lot of effort to hold it there. And meanwhile, you can't really enjoy being at the beach because you're very focused on keeping that surfboard under the water. And as soon as you relax, oof, it shoots up and hits you in the face. That's kind of suppression. And the other one is avoidance. So you do every kind of thing to avoid what you're going through, avoid your experience of being alive at that moment. So people do all kinds of things. They might overwork. They might start using drugs and alcohol. They might just physically avoid going places, seeing people. They might stop answering the phone. They might stop turning up at work. They're avoiding. Yep, it never helps long term. It makes them feel better for a little while, but that little while tends to shrink, and over time it gets worse and worse. And if you follow this path, you're basically making away moves. You do it dedicatedly enough, you'll end up with a full-blown mental health condition. So the idea is struggling against our feelings makes them worse, especially with anxiety, but many feelings. It's the struggle against it, the fight against our feelings, which are natural, generates a whole heap of extra stress and creates a whole heap of extra burden on top of what would have otherwise just been an uncomfortable feeling. I have a cool little video here, but I don't know if we've got time. Shall I just skip that?
Yeah, I think so, because
Yeah.
we're already like half an hour over time.
Okay, we'll skip
But
that.
this is very important things that you're talking about now. And one quick question.
Yes.
Will you make this slideshow available for us to share among our people?
Yeah, we can talk about that. I don't know. Yeah, we can talk about that, sure.
Okay.
All right, so use of metaphors. This is a way of accessing a higher part of the mind. Remember how I talked about the solution comes from the higher layer of the mind? So using metaphors is a way of talking about people's experience from a slightly higher part of the mind. And so one metaphor about the struggle against our feelings is the quicksand metaphor. And so it's a bit of a cultural thing. Not everybody watched old cowboy and western movies, but it was a common thing for the hero to end up falling in quicksand. And the idea is that the more you struggle when you're caught in quicksand, the quicker you get sucked down. And that what you have to do when you're stuck in quicksand is actually relax and lay back and spread your weight out and then inch your way to safety. Yep, so if you've never heard of quicksand, it won't work. You've got to choose your metaphors according to where you live. But that is a good metaphor that people often get around anxiety because they know they're trying to fight it. And when you point it out, they know that it makes it worse. And then the thing that feels exactly the wrong thing to do, i.e. relax, is actually the most helpful thing to do. All right. So these are the ideas that we want people to replace their misconceptions with. If they can embed some of these ideas, right, it's changing the trajectory of their mind. That will impact on how they feel. So feelings are normal. It's just part of human beings. They're a force of nature. They're natural. It's just like the weather. Some days it's sunny, some days it's rainy. Some days it's windy, some days it's cold. And we decide if that's a good day or a bad day. It's just weather, force of nature, and feelings are like that. There's no such thing as a good or bad feeling. They're just pleasant or unpleasant. They feel nice or they don't feel nice, but they're not good and they're not bad. Especially they're not bad. It's fine to think some feelings are good. It doesn't really cause problems. But to think some feelings are bad causes problems. Yeah. Because you're trying to reject a part of yourself. You're actually condemning yourself for having a natural feeling. That all our feelings have evolved for a reason, and they help us in certain conditions. Feelings only happen in the present. People find this a very helpful realization, that we might be worrying about what happened in the past or what's happening in the future, but the feeling is in the present. So if you want to be mindful, you want to follow mindfulness and be in the present, well, your feelings are part of the present. If you're using mindfulness as a way of escaping your feelings, then you're misusing it. It won't help you. Feelings start, they last for a while, and then they end. They always end. They go like this, wave. It's a wave. So they're dynamic. They won't last forever. Just hold on. It'll move past on its own. You don't have to force it away. Feelings start before we know it. Okay? The feeling, by the time you realize you're having a feeling, it's already started. This is very important. It's already started because you can't notice a feeling before it happens because it hasn't happened. So even if you notice very, very soon as a feeling starts, it's already started. And once a feeling has started, once it is happening, it's real. It's real, okay? Once it's started, it's real, and it's real while it's happening, but it does go away on its own. And we respond to our feelings. So how we feel affects how we think and affects what we do. We respond to our feelings, and the way we respond makes them better or worse. And don't waste your time trying to control your feelings, because you'll create big problems. All right, so this is a little paper exercise that I do with people that you could easily replicate. It's not. This is the one I thought I was going to do before. It won't be quite as cool because we're not there and I can't really do my whole song and dance. But basically, this is a way of exploring. You can use it in two ways. One, to collect information, so recognizing what's going on for someone, or supporting someone to understand their own feelings. All right, so the idea is, this is what I do in a bit of paper, that basically we're feeling normal. We just got normal little ups and downs. Yeah. It's just our steady state, our average life. We're not feeling super happy, we're not feeling super bad. And then something happens. Something always happens to trigger off a feeling. The something that happens can either be outside of us, i.e. other people, events, things going on in my environment. Something happens to me, or something happens within me. I think of something, I remember something, I start worrying about something. But either way, something happens, and then a wave of feeling takes place. So the feeling wasn't there at this point. Something happened, and then this feeling starts. And the feeling, it rises. It rises to a certain height, and it lasts for a certain amount of time, and then it goes down. Yep. Now, after the feeling starts, somewhere along the way, we notice that the feeling has happened. You see? Now, some people don't notice for a long time. They don't notice until it's already very big because they've been trying to ignore it. Some people are able to notice it very early. Either way, at some point you notice, and then we respond to that feeling. We respond to it in our minds with certain thoughts, and we respond to it in our behavior with our actions. And if we're invested in suppressing, ignoring, or avoiding, what we tend to do is it drives the feeling up sharper, and the feeling is driven up higher than it otherwise would have. And the feeling lasts longer than it otherwise would have, until eventually it still goes down. And this part here, this portion here, is additional burden that we have created because of how we responded to our bad feelings that we must get rid of and control. And that portion here is the part that we can help people with, reduce their suffering, reduce the impact of this feeling. But we're not going to try to buy into the idea that we're going to get rid of the feeling altogether. But we can significantly reduce the burden by how the person responds to the feeling when they notice it. This is a super helpful way of explaining it to people. And the other way is we can gather information from the person we're working with about what it is for them in all these different phases. Okay, so we can ask them questions about what are they like when they're doing well, when they're feeling fine. What are they like? What are they doing? What are they thinking? What are they feeling when they're doing fine? What are the kinds of things that happen that trigger off this anxiety? Because they're different things for different people, but what are the things that trigger it off for you, the person who I'm working with? And then how do they try to cope? What strategies are they using? Are they away moves? Are they towards moves? Are they suppressing? Are they avoiding? Are they ignoring? What's their approach? Is it working? You can explore what it's like at the extremes. What is it like up here when things just completely lose it? How bad does it get? And what are they like when they start calming? And most importantly, what are the things that help? If anybody's doing anything that helps, do more. Do it more. Do more of what helps and do less of what doesn't help. That's kind of what our job is. Identify what helps and do it more, and avoid all of this. You can avoid all of this. And this red area, this is mental disorder after a while. And this is just normal, natural feelings. And boy, it just feels uncomfortable at the moment because I'm really nervous about this, but it kind of makes sense that I'm nervous because X, Y, and Z. And it doesn't have to be a big deal. And I don't have to try to squash that feeling and make it worse into a big twisty problem. Because what can happen if they are so invested in this, it can end up like that. It's distortion and stuckness and a big old mental health problem. All right, that's a very good exercise. All right, this is I think probably my last key strategy for anxiety is basically a formula for not doing stuff that makes it all worse. Right? The name of the game is not to make it worse and then try to make it better. So the opposite of ignoring, suppressing, and avoiding is awareness, acceptance, and action. Yep. And this is how we access deeper layers of the mind to help facilitate healing. So awareness means, at its most basic level, it means, what am I feeling? Because people who don't want to feel bad, they don't even want to look at it, and they look everywhere else except where they are, what they are feeling, and they ignore their feelings so much. So becoming aware of what you're feeling is a very helpful practice and skill, and it also forces your mind into a slightly higher layer because you're trying to become aware of your own thoughts and feelings. And that means you have to go to a superposition. You have to go to a witnessing layer that can witness that feeling. And so by asking that question or developing that approach, you go to a higher layer. Yeah, within yourself. And acceptance is the magic X factor.
Kamalesh, I have a question. Is the Mahat, the witnessing aspect of the self, of those three aspects of Chitta, Aham, and Mahat?
Yeah. So each layer witnesses the lower layer, and the ultimate witness is Paramatma. There's the koshas, which we didn't talk about, which are even more defined layers. And so wherever the problem is, you just go to the next layer up, but you don't have to worry about finding it. All you have to do is witness the problem, and then you are there. You are there already. And what it does is it creates a little psychological gap between this problematic feeling and thought, and now I'm witnessing that problematic feeling and thought. I'm not down there, I'm up here. Okay? So you put yourself into this into your ascending in your levels of awareness. And if the problem is on a very subtle level, well, you have to go to an even more subtle level. But mostly feelings are sort of half in the body, half in the mind. So you don't have to be a great spiritualist to be able to just go one step up. Now, acceptance is the opposite of struggle. We've just identified, and if you go back and watch that video, you'll probably find you quite like it. But struggling against the feelings makes it worse because we're rejecting part of ourself, and it generates stress. And so the opposite of that is essentially acceptance. And we are accepting the nature of reality as it appears to us in the present, which includes how we feel. Now, I'm very quick to point out to people that I'm not talking about accepting bad scenarios or poor behavior from other people or exploitation or oppression or people just being, mean-minded towards you. I'm not talking about accepting anything like that. Work hard to change your life. Okay, that's the action part. Acceptance in this case just refers to your feeling, the feeling that you're having. Just accept the fact that it's happening. You don't pretend you like it. You don't do positive thinking. You just accept the fact that you're having the feeling, and it's sort of shruggy. It doesn't have to be a big deal. Oh well, it's kind of uncomfortable, but it is what it is. And then you do stuff. People are often quite good at awareness. I know what I'm feeling, and then I try to get rid of it, but it doesn't work, and they're skipping this middle part of acceptance. If you add that in, they'll be much, much more effective at handling what they're going through. And what do you get people to do? Well, you don't get people to do anxiety removal strategies. Okay? You don't get them to do special little techniques to get rid of anxiety. What you get them to do is life. Do your life. Do the stuff that matters to you. Make moves towards the person you want to be, the life you want to have, and your feelings come along for the ride. That's another metaphor. You don't put the feelings in the driver's seat, and you don't stuff your feelings in the boot. You put your feelings in the passenger seat, and I'm driving, and my feelings are coming along for the ride. Okay, you're right there. I can acknowledge you. I know that you're happening, but I'm making my decisions, and I'm turning left or right. So you don't do your actions based on your feelings, but you don't, which is not the same as ignoring them. You just accept the fact you're having them. So the skills we want people to develop is, for people to whom this is new, I say literally ask yourself the question, what am I feeling right now? And as soon as you ask yourself the question, part of your mind will try to answer the question. And so people are like, oh, I don't know, how can I do it? Well, just ask the question and try to know, and you'll get better at it. And we want people to notice their feelings quicker, and we want people to be able to name their feelings accurately. Okay, because people get this experience where all of their feelings are just a big tangle and it's overwhelming. So we want people to pull back a bit, observe, and notice and name, I'm feeling anxious right now. I'm feeling terrified right now. I'm feeling angry right now. I'm feeling very sad. I'm sad and angry. Whatever it is, get people to notice and name it. And then we're just trying to create space around the feeling. So we're not, the tendency when we think our feelings are a problem, we clamp down and around them and we try to control them, and we're trying to just pull back, create space around the feeling, and then do your life. And this is what we should help people do. Make a plan. People know what they want to be doing, what they should be doing, what would help them in their life. Mostly they know some things. And we can help them make a plan around that and support them to follow that plan even if they feel anxious. In fact, it's good if you feel anxious, because that gives you an opportunity to practice some of this stuff. Expect to feel anxious when you try to follow the plan. It's not a failure. It's just part of it, and it's fine. Feelings come along for the ride, okay? So I write it down. I'm going to give you a formula, a really awesome formula. It's going to help. And it does, okay? And I go, number 1, awareness. Notice and name your feelings. Number 2, acceptance. Just allow the feeling to happen. Number 3, do stuff. That's literally what I write on a bit of paper, and they take it away because they need something to hold on to when they're feeling very, very upset. And it's very simple, and it is one of the most effective little trichonas for helping with emotional issues. Awareness plus acceptance plus action plus doing what matters. Super powerful. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
That is, so if one is feeling really very anxious and then they start doing kirtan,
Yes.
and every time they do kirtan, they feel good. I mean,
Yes.
then is that in any way, is there anything wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. I encourage people to examine their intentions behind any strategy, because their intentions are more important than whatever the strategy that they're employing. And if they are using kirtan to get away from their feelings, then of course they're still doing kirtan. It's still beneficial, but that will have to be addressed at some point. The fact that they are trying to avoid or escape their feelings, because the feeling is there for some reason, and it's probably some kind of thought structure that's in their mind. It can be some physical imbalance, but normally it'll be some kind of misconceptions that are sort of generating or provoking that feeling. And those are the entanglements, the sanskaras that we have to unfurl on the spiritual path. So you'll have to face it eventually, whatever it is. In my opinion, it's not bad. But you can sing kirtan and feel anxious. You can sing kirtan and feel angry for a while. Like I said, it comes and goes. You don't have to stay there, but you don't have to exclude your feelings and dive. There's a term called spiritual bypassing, which is a bit of a faddy term, but it's easy if you have mental health challenges, problematic feelings or thoughts, etc. You can kind of hide a little bit inside spiritual philosophical ideas or even spiritual practices, depending on your intentions. Yeah. So you just explore these things. You don't necessarily tell people, you just let them consider it themselves. That's the most important thing. All right, so this is just a bit of a review of what we've just talked about. Feelings are okay. They're not problems. The main thing is how we respond to those feelings. That makes all the difference. And really, it's all about moving towards the person you want to be, the life you want to have. Yep. So health coaches, mental health, focus on these three things. Can I recognize mental health issues? And can I tell when it's getting, a bit too serious for me? Who can I connect with? And what kind of support skills have I got that I can offer that are super helpful, or at least a bit helpful? Sometimes I say to people, look, we don't have to make everything perfect. Sometimes a 10% improvement is massive and it makes all the difference. It takes a bit of the stress out for us and for the person. They think, oh, okay, well, maybe I can make little changes. This wave idea of feelings is very, very helpful for people. Because to understand your feelings gives you room to start replacing some of your misconceptions, to explore how you're responding to your own feelings. And this idea that we can just reduce, that's that idea, 10 or 20% reduction in impact, suddenly it's fine. And you can use that to collect information. This model here, the interaction between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, it's better to talk about that than the deep philosophical, psychological theories. It's too much for people when they're already suffering. They can't process it. Some people like it, but basically this is, we're trying to get a dynamic balance, equipoise, equilibrium between these three areas. Look out for this, avoiding, ignoring, and suppressing. And this formula here, at least for anxiety, is just very, very potent. Awareness plus acceptance plus action in the right direction, i.e. towards who you want to be. That's the one. That is the one. And I think, just to finish, people are, from our spiritual point of view, everyone is embedded in consciousness. Everyone is a potential Buddha. Everyone is a potential Sadvipra. Everyone is a potential fully enlightened entity. And we're all on that path, and we all just want to make moves towards that kind of, stations along the way. And I think that people, even for people who are not spiritualists, you can connect into the greatness of them through their values. What do they hold dear to their heart? And you can utilize those things to motivate or encourage, support people to make changes in their life. Little changes. All right. That's the end. Namaskar. Thank you. You made it. You made it.
Kamalesh, I think that it is it is a statement of the great interest that we all had in what you were talking about, that we've stayed with you this entire length of time. This is nearly 2.5 hours, but you've been talking important stuff. I think everyone will agree. How about if we have another 1 minute kirtan, and then we'll close it.
Kamalesh, please.
Me? Okay. Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam Kevalam, Bhavanam